don't know if it was just one of those moments where I was awakened, consciousness, because I must have been 3 or 4, and I just remember, I still remember the feeling of that quarter stuck in my throat. It definitely, yeah, it wasn't nice.
No, I can imagine. That's like pure fear, when you can't breathe. Oh my
hmm
gosh.
And thankfully, my parents knew exactly what to do. I mean, I remember my father, just slapping my diaper, and eventually it came out. And I remember that relief too, and it fell on the kitchen floor. And I was like, "Oh man, oh, that sucked." And I'm pretty sure I cried because,
You'll never do that again.
yeah, I'm like, "Oh man." Ever since then, I'm like, "Yeah, from now on, I will not put quarters down my throat." And another early memory I have, probably around the same age, is when I just walked right. I was, of course, I was like maybe 4 or 5, and I was the exact height to walk right underneath a trampoline without having to duck. And my aunt was jumping on it, and she fell right on my head, and I could have
Oh
easily been
no.
killed that day. I remember everything went black. Suddenly, everything came back on, and my dad was holding me, and I was just gasping for air. I mean, I think about that too. I've actually had a couple of near-death experiences when I was a kid. Now that I think
Holy
about it,
smokes, man.
there was an. Hold on, I'll mention one more. Me and my dad were fishing. I think I was the same age, actually, probably. It must have been a rough year for me. Uh, and so all of a sudden, I'm underwater, and my dad jumps in. He's trying to feel for me. This is a pond. This is a catfish pond, so it's murky and you can't see anything. And I almost died there. I mean, I could have just easily drowned, and I remember that too.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So,
Well, you're alive to tell the tale, and
sometimes I
at
wonder.
least
I'm like, how the universe works. Sometimes I'm like, man, I wonder if I've died several times, but the dimensions shift that way in order to keep me alive, and then how and basically I only die from natural causes. That's like a true death, but pretty much just freak accidents. It just shifts you to another dimension. That's a fun little theory I like to think about sometimes.
that is pretty interesting. I wonder if you think about it in terms of like a video game logic, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, it's like, oh, you didn't actually die. It was just like you went to a different universe, different dimension.
Yeah, and I really like to believe that there are multiple dimensions, especially with their dreams. I mean, maybe our dreams mean absolutely nothing, but I like to think that it's windows into other dimensions at times. But it's
Yeah.
something fun to think about because we don't have any other sources other than religion into what happens afterwards, and so it's simply just fun, just to think about what happens. Reincarnation. Think about what animal you could be, and to this day people just still talk about it. I mean, people talked about it way thousands of years ago, and it's still a very hot topic. You see people talking about it on TV all the time still.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you don't have the answers, it's fun to like come up with basically anything, speculate, and
hmm
it's part of the human experience, contemplating or trying to understand what happens after.
I know one thing I've been thinking about fairly recently is Bible accurate angels, about how crazy those things look.
Like the million eyes and all that
Yeah, the
stuff.
wings and the faces. I'm like, man, that would be so wild just to see. Sometimes when I'm just driving down the road, I'm like, I imagine what would it be like if just one of those biblical angels just kind of popped up.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like when you think about stuff like, the Bible and other, religious books, how, part of it you think, okay, maybe, this stuff actually did exist and somebody has, recorded all of it and people are passing the stories down from generation to generation.
hmm
But then, the other part of you, the cynical part, thinks, wow, there's no way this stuff actually, exists or whatever. But yeah, it's like there's no way of actually knowing. You just have to
Yep.
go on faith
Right.
and
Exactly.
assume that everything is as they say it is.
Yeah, and there, you know, that's just the thing. It's just I believe our comprehension levels sometimes. I think we can only process so much with our mentality and our brain processing, and I believe that, if anything, it's in a totally different realm that we cannot even fathom to enter or envision. And sometimes I think about the concept of heaven. I'm like, eh, I just don't really think it's gonna be the clouds and the and structures. I just don't think heaven. I think heaven's beyond man-made structures. I think it's gonna be something that we can't even fully comprehend, and we're probably gonna be in a totally different form where we don't even need structures like that. And it's just, the further you think about it, the more complicated it becomes, because you just don't know what form you could be, traversing, and what capabilities you have. And it's just, like I said, it's just one of those really fun topics to really go through in your head and talk to people about.
Oh yeah, it's super interesting. Just the fact that there's no, obviously nobody knows,
Hmm.
or if people know, they're definitely not telling anybody.
Right.
But it's like you have to think about it as a different plane of existence. It's not
Yep.
above your head. It's not a physical location that you could just go to and then come back. It's just
Yeah.
it's ethereal.
Yeah. It's like whenever people are talking about heaven or hell, they're like pointing up and down. I'm like, why don't you just kind of? Well, you might as well just point left or right. 'Cause-
Exactly.
but yeah, definitely. Definitely a discuss. I talked to a lot of people about that. My sister, my wife, friends. I mean, they all have their different perspectives, which they're all quite fascinating.